Portals of the real, UFOs, spirits, and beings that shouldn't exist. The deeper we peer into the universe, the more it stares back with riddles we cannot solve. Our telescopes extend further into the void. Our particle accelerators split atoms into ever stranger fragments. And our quantum experiments bend the very rules we once considered immutable. Yet, for all our scientific triumphs, the mysteries that haunt humanity remain stubbornly unyielding. UFO sightings persist despite decades of denials and disclosures. Cryptid reports continue from forests and mountains untouched by modern civilization, and paranormal phenomena, hauntings, poltergeists, psychic visions, erupt across cultures with patterns too consistent to dismiss. At the intersection of these enigmas lies an unsettling possibility. Perhaps we are not discovering the universe, but gradually noticing the cracks in its rendering. The idea of a simulated or nested reality has reshaped the way we interpret such phenomena. In the first volume, we examine the hypothesis that what we perceive as reality might be a vast computational construct, or more accurately, a layered system of interdependent realities, each containing rule sets, boundary conditions, and observers. If this is true, UFOs, ghosts, and cryptids may not be disconnected oddities scattered across folklore and modern eyewitness reports. They might instead be symptoms of deeper architectural complexities, momentary glitches, where one layer of reality bleeds into another. Imagine for a moment that the universe operates like a stacked network of simulations, each one a recursive copy of a higher dimensional template. Our world, with its mountains, oceans, biological life, and physical constants, may represent just one branch in an infinite tree of experiential realities. Within this framework, UFOs might not be alien spacecraft at all, but debugging drones from a higher layer of existence, monitoring the coherence of our simulated plane. Ghosts could be data echoes, fragments of recorded consciousness replaying across timelines. Cryptids, those elusive creatures glimpsed but never captured, might be entities rendered partially into our environment from adjacent realities. None of these phenomena need to originate from outside in a conventional sense. They may instead represent collisions between incompatible data layers within a unified yet fractalized system. Throughout history, humanity has sought to explain these anomalies through myth, religion, and science, each offering narratives that fit the epistemology of its time. Ancient cultures saw UFOs as gods descending in chariots of fire. Spirits were once the restless dead, seeking resolution in the mortal realm. Cryptids were the guardians of forbidden places. Today, we reinterpret them through the lens of physics, information theory, and quantum mechanics. Yet the core experiences remain strikingly unchanged. The reports are timeless, spinning disks streaking through the night sky, voices whispering from nowhere, glowing-eyed beasts lurking at the edges of human habitation. This cross-cultural persistence hints at an underlying metaphenomenon, something neither subjective hallucination nor mere physical event, a signal encoded across epochs. One of the emerging frameworks in cutting-edge physics and consciousness studies is the idea that our world exists within a multi-layered holographic system. Dimensions fold upon dimensions, timelines branch infinitely, and observers collapse possibilities simply by noticing them. If this is true, then UFOs, paranormal activity, and cryptid manifestations could be feedback artifacts from higher-order information fields. These phenomena do not break the laws of physics. They may simply obey another set of laws above our own, operating one layer higher than what we can currently measure. This volume will explore these possibilities not as isolated mysteries, but as interconnected expressions of the same underlying reality dynamics. We will examine UFOs not only as extraterrestrial hypotheses, but as manifestations of intelligent architectures, whether designed by advanced beings or by the system itself. We will explore ghosts, spirits, and poltergeists as potential quantum echoes, interacting with consciousness in ways that blur the distinction between observer and observed. We will investigate cryptids as living glitches, occupying unstable ontological ground between physical existence and non-material templates. And we will revisit ancient shamanic cosmologies, modern contact narratives, and cutting-edge physics to build a unified framework, one in which these mysteries are neither random nor disconnected, but integral features of a reality in flux. To enter this inquiry, however, requires us to suspend familiar assumptions. If the universe is computational, then consciousness may be both hardware and software, a participant observer capable of influencing the rendering process. If UFOs are not simply visitors, but architectural interventions, then disclosure may never come in the form of official government statements. It may instead arrive through personal experience, subtle anomalies, and dreamlike encounters. If cryptids exist, they may represent entities half-born into our simulation, neither fully compatible nor fully rejected by the underlying code. And if paranormal phenomena arise from interactions between overlapping timelines, then our ghosts may not be dead at all, merely existing elsewhere simultaneously. In the chapters that follow, we will traverse the boundary zones of consensus reality. We will study the strange attractors, the patterns, locations, and conditions under which UFO sightings, hauntings, and cryptid encounters converge. We will investigate high strangeness portals, electromagnetic vortices, and geological hotspots where the fabric of space-time itself seems to thin. We will compare testimonies from mystics, shamans, military whistleblowers, and quantum theorists, searching for common structures beneath wildly different narratives. Our goal is not to reduce these phenomena into a single tidy explanation, but to reveal the hidden architectures that may underlie them all. This journey will not provide closure. If anything, it will complicate the mystery. But in embracing these complications, we may come closer to understanding the nature of our existence. The UFOs in the sky, the shadows in the corner of the room, the cryptids lurking in forbidden forests. Perhaps they are not out there at all. Perhaps they are inside the code itself, woven into the underlying instructions that generate everything we see and everything we are. Chapter 1: UFOs and the Programmers of the Sky. For as long as humans have gazed into the night sky, we have seen things we cannot explain. Strange lights hovering in silence, luminous disks vanishing into thin air, fiery objects darting between stars, and colossal structures hanging motionless above mountain peaks. These reports stretch across centuries, cultures, and continents. From ancient Sanskrit descriptions of flying chariots to the mysterious airships of the late 19th century, from the Nuremberg celestial battle of 1561 to the 20th century explosion of flying saucer sightings, one thread connects them all. The phenomenon adapts. UFOs seem to present themselves just beyond the edge of human understanding, always a step ahead of our science, our myths, and our expectations. When humanity navigated by stars, UFOs arrived as divine chariots carrying gods and heroes across the heavens. When steam engines reshaped society, they appeared as fantastical airships piloted by beings from unknown lands. After the Second World War, amid radar networks and jet propulsion, they became sleek metallic discs performing impossible maneuvers. And now, in an age defined by quantum physics and multiverse speculation, UFOs increasingly display properties that challenge the very framework of space-time. Craft phasing in and out of visibility, luminous orbs that respond to thought, objects accelerating beyond known physical limits without heat or sonic signatures. The phenomenon evolves in lockstep with us, as though the interface adapts to the observer. This is not behavior one would expect from visiting interstellar travelers crossing vast distances of space. Rather, it suggests a deeper connection between UFOs and the architecture of our own reality. It is as if they are generated in context, deliberately rendered to be both familiar and unknowable at once, a message embedded in the medium of perception itself. For much of the 20th century, the extraterrestrial hypothesis dominated. UFOs were presumed to be vehicles piloted by beings from distant star systems. The simplicity of the idea was compelling, especially in an era of Cold War anxieties and the dawn of space exploration. But as reports accumulated and data deepened, inconsistencies emerged. UFOs rarely behave like objects traversing interstellar distances. They appear suddenly, without detectable approach paths. They perform maneuvers that defy inertia and energy constraints. They exhibit luminescence without heat and acceleration without sonic booms. Even more puzzling, witnesses frequently describe subjective phenomena during encounters, distortions of time, heightened states of consciousness, telepathic impressions, and an uncanny sense that the objects somehow knew they were being observed. This correlation between UFO activity and altered states of consciousness hints at something more profound than alien visitors. It suggests that UFOs operate on a level where perception itself becomes part of the phenomenon. In a universe framed by simulation theory, they may not be spacecraft at all, but system-level interventions, manifestations of higher-order information structures interacting with our layer of reality. Our world may be a nested environment running atop a deeper informational substrate, and UFOs could represent monitoring probes or maintenance routines deployed by entities we can neither fully perceive nor comprehend. This would explain their clustering around sensitive thresholds, nuclear facilities, high-energy experiments, and moments of collective human upheaval. Whenever we approach activities that risk destabilizing our layer, splitting atoms, probing quantum vacuums, networking consciousness, the system responds. The French astronomer Jacques Vallée proposed decades ago that UFOs form part of an embedded control system, a feedback mechanism designed not to invade or dominate, but to subtly influence human belief, behavior, and evolution. He noted striking consistencies across thousands of cases: telepathic communications, archetypal symbols, transformative visions, and reports of profound personal change after encounters. If Valle's hypothesis is correct, UFOs are less about otherworldly civilizations and more about guided adaptation, an evolving conversation between human consciousness and a deeper intelligence embedded within reality itself. In this view, UFOs act like catalysts, pushing humanity toward thresholds of technological and spiritual growth by periodically disrupting our assumptions about what is possible. This framework resonates with simulation theory in unexpected ways. If our reality operates on programmable rules, UFOs could be dynamic subroutines or autonomous agents that emerge when the system detects instability or stagnation. They may exist not as permanent objects, but as responsive phenomena, manifestations of an intelligent environment adjusting itself in real time. Their appearances are not random. They follow the rhythms of history. Roswell occurred at the dawn of the nuclear era. The great UFO wave of the 1950s unfolded alongside breakthroughs in electronics and aerospace technology. The Phoenix Lights of 1997 coincided with the birth of the Internet, a shift in human connectivity on a planetary scale. And today, as we cross thresholds in quantum computation, artificial intelligence, and genetic engineering, reports of transdimensional craft and structured plasma orbs surge once more. The phenomenon shadows our evolution, intervening precisely when our trajectory changes. Perhaps what we are witnessing is reality maintenance. If we are inside a layered simulation, UFOs may function as guardians of coherence, ensuring that our collective actions don't fracture the environment or reveal too much of the scaffolding beneath it. This would explain why sightings intensify around military installations and advanced research facilities. Not because UFOs are curious about us, but because the system monitors potential cascade effects that ripple outward into higher layers of existence. There is another possibility, equally compelling and unsettling. UFOs are not separate from us at all. They may represent a future iteration of humanity, evolved beyond our current perception of space, time, and matter, returning not from distant stars, but from higher layers of our own potential timelines. In this scenario, they are not alien visitors, but architects in training, ensuring the stability of a simulation they themselves once inhabited. This could explain why their behavior is paradoxical, sometimes distant and elusive, sometimes intimately connected to human consciousness. It also fits the increasingly reported sense among experiencers that UFOs belong here as much as we do. Across thousands of encounters, one theme repeats with startling consistency. Consciousness itself seems to be the interface. UFOs do not simply interact with physical matter, they interact with minds. Witnesses describe shared visions, sudden intuitive downloads, even telepathic dialogues. Some experiencers emerge with profound shifts in worldview, as though something within their perception has been rewritten. If our consciousness functions as a rendering engine for reality, collapsing probability fields into experienced outcomes, then UFOs might represent phenomena that exist beyond conventional space-time until we observe them, manifestations of information resolving into matter only when awareness engages with them. Seen through this lens, UFOs are not separate from us. They are entangled with us, arising at the crossroads of intelligence, perception, and environment. They are signals from deeper layers, embedded within the system itself, revealing just enough to provoke awe, confusion, and curiosity, but never enough to resolve the mystery fully. Their role may not be to answer our questions, but to stimulate the questions themselves, pushing human thought toward increasingly complex models of reality. And perhaps this is the point. Perhaps the phenomenon is designed to keep us looking upward, outward, and inward simultaneously, forcing us to confront the incompleteness of our understanding. Whether UFOs originate from other timelines, higher dimensions, or the living architecture of the simulation itself, their presence tells us one thing with certainty. Reality is stranger, deeper, and more dynamic than we have been taught to believe. The sky has never been empty. The silence above us is only apparent. Something watches, something adjusts, and occasionally, when thresholds are crossed, something intervenes. UFOs are not simply anomalies in the air. They may be glimpses of the code beneath existence itself, subtle reminders that what we see is not all there is. We are being observed. But more profoundly, we are being invited to observe differently. Chapter 2: Spirits, Ghosts, and Quantum Echoes. When people speak of ghosts, they rarely mean the same thing. To some, ghosts are the restless dead, tethered to unfinished business. To others, they are shadows from other dimensions, bleeding through the thin fabric of space and time. Across cultures and centuries, we encounter the same motifs: voices in empty rooms, apparitions fading into walls, poltergeists hurling objects without cause, and flickers of impossible memory. Science often dismisses these experiences as tricks of perception, but the persistence of patterns and the consistency across cultures separated by oceans and millennia suggests something more is at work. If our reality is a layered simulation, ghosts may not be supernatural beings in the conventional sense. They could represent residual information fields, fragments of consciousness persisting within the data structure of the environment, or overlapping threads from adjacent timelines bleeding into ours. What we interpret as hauntings could be a kind of quantum echo, not the spirits of the dead returning to visit the living, but events and personalities cached within the system, replaying across space-time in ways we don't yet understand. The recurring archetypes are strikingly consistent. A soldier forever pacing a ruined fort. A woman in white drifting through the hallways of an abandoned house. Footsteps following down empty staircases. While folklore frames these as spirits with unfinished business, another possibility emerges. We may be witnessing data loops within the simulation, localized recordings of high-emotion events so deeply encoded in the environment that they occasionally resurface, like a ghostly glitch in memory. In this view, the so-called haunted house is not literally inhabited by lingering souls, but sits atop entangled fields of recorded consciousness, snapshots of experience still accessible under specific conditions. This would explain why many hauntings are tied to place rather than person. Certain environments, old battlefields, hospitals, or ancient sites, carry an energy described as charged or heavy. Within a simulation framework, these sites may act like hard drives storing deeply imprinted data, where traumatic or emotionally intense experiences create persistent patterns in the information field. Under the right circumstances, often involving altered states of consciousness or fluctuations in local electromagnetic conditions, these patterns temporarily become accessible, replaying fragments of past events. What we perceive as ghosts could simply be our interface resolving archived data in a sensory form. And yet, not all hauntings behave like passive replays. Some seem interactive, aware, even mischievous. Poltergeist activity in particular challenges any simple mechanical model. Objects are moved, doors slam, electronics fail, and phenomena escalate in response to human attention. These effects are often strongest around adolescents or individuals under emotional strain, suggesting a link between human consciousness and environmental manifestation. In a nested reality, poltergeists may represent feedback loops between observer and system, where heightened psychic energy destabilizes the local rendering process, causing objects to behave unpredictably. What seems like an external force may, in fact, be an emergent property of consciousness interacting directly with the underlying informational substrate. There are even stranger anomalies, time slips, where individuals momentarily step into another era entirely. In Liverpool's Bold Street, numerous witnesses have described walking into what appears to be the 1950s, complete with shops, cars, and people dressed in period clothing, only to blink and find themselves back in the present. Some report hearing voices or music from another century, as though brushing against a parallel timeline. These events defy ordinary physics, but align perfectly with the concept of nested simulations and layer overlaps. If our reality consists of branching timelines encoded within the same underlying system, then localized instabilities might occasionally allow two distinct states of reality to coexist in the same space, producing fleeting perceptual crossovers. This also offers a provocative reinterpretation of the afterlife itself. Across countless traditions, we find descriptions of non-physical realms: the Tibetan bardo, the Christian heaven, the Egyptian duat, shamanic spirit worlds, all portrayed as layered dimensions adjacent to our own. What if these are not metaphorical but literal adjacent realities, existing parallel to our own layer within a larger computational architecture? When consciousness detaches from the biological interface we call the body, it may not vanish but transitions into another layer of the simulation, carrying its data into a different operating environment. In some cases, however, transitions may be incomplete, interrupted, or deliberately reversed. Ghostly encounters might represent consciousness fragments temporarily intersecting back into our rendering field. Altered states of consciousness also appear to thin the boundary between realities. Shamans, mystics, and near-death experiencers consistently describe entering spirit realms populated by luminous beings, ancestral guides, and entities of shifting form. Neuroscience interprets these visions as hallucinations triggered by oxygen deprivation or neurochemical surges. But the consistency of cross-cultural reports suggests something deeper. Altered states may allow perception to bypass ordinary sensory limitations, accessing higher bandwidth channels of the simulation normally hidden from conscious awareness. If the physical world is a rendered interface optimized for survival, then mystical experiences might represent direct engagement with the raw informational substrate beneath it. This would also explain why UFO encounters, ghost sightings, and cryptid experiences so often cluster in the same high strangeness regions: Skinwalker Ranch, Sedona, the Bridgewater Triangle, Mount Shasta. These locations exhibit spikes of electromagnetic activity, geomagnetic anomalies, and unexplained plasma phenomena, suggesting localized disruptions in the coherence of spacetime. In such conditions, the system may momentarily weaken its boundaries, allowing data bleed between layers. Ghosts, UFOs, shadow figures, and cryptids emerging as different expressions of the same instability. To the experiencer, these events seem unrelated, but from the perspective of nested realities, they are all connected, manifestations of a single underlying phenomenon: reality overlap. Even the psychological effects of hauntings align with this framework. Experiencers frequently describe feelings of being watched, sudden temperature drops, oppressive atmospheres, and distorted perception of time, all symptoms consistent with localized interference in the rendering process. If consciousness participates in shaping reality, then encountering unresolved information patterns, ghost data, may temporarily entangle observer and environment, producing sensations of presence and fear while amplifying the likelihood of further anomalies. The paradox is that these phenomena simultaneously feel external and internal. The apparitions appear independent, yet they seem to know when we notice them. The poltergeist responds to emotional states. The footsteps stop when we hold our breath. In a fully external framework, this makes no sense, but within a simulation model, it suggests that consciousness, environment, and phenomenon are all entangled nodes in the same informational network. What we call ghosts may not exist independently of perception. Rather, they emerge through the act of perception itself, co-created by observer and system. This also raises unsettling questions about memory and identity. If consciousness can leave imprints on environments, are we constantly writing fragments of ourselves into the code of reality? Could intense emotional states, births, deaths, violence, ecstasy, create patterns so enduring that they persist as autonomous echoes long after the original observer is gone? In this sense, a haunting might not be the presence of someone else, but the persistence of ourselves, refracted and replayed in unexpected ways. The boundary between life and death, material and immaterial, natural and supernatural, begins to dissolve under this lens. Rather than separate domains, they appear as different bandwidths of the same system, overlapping in ways we occasionally perceive but rarely understand. Ghosts, spirits, and quantum echoes are not anomalies intruding into a closed reality. They are reminders that our layer was never closed at all. The simulation is porous by design, its edges soft, its data structures interwoven across timelines and dimensions. When the veil thins, what we call the paranormal is simply the system revealing its deeper architecture. It does not break the laws of nature. It reveals that our understanding of those laws has always been incomplete. Hauntings, visions, and apparitions are less evidence of something beyond reality than they are glimpses of how reality actually works. If UFOs force us to question where we stand in the cosmos, ghosts force us to question what we are. Are we singular beings moving linearly through time, or complex waveforms entangled with multiple states of existence simultaneously? Are we physical entities generating consciousness, or consciousness projecting the illusion of matter and continuity into a shared interface? The answer may not lie in choosing one perspective over the other, but in accepting both as partial truths within a larger system too vast for us to fully comprehend. The dead are not gone. The past is not past. What we call paranormal may simply be the echoes of other layers, brushing against ours in fleeting alignments. In the chapters to come, as we explore cryptids, portals, and interdimensional ecosystems, this pattern will recur. Phenomena once thought unrelated are revealed as expressions of the same underlying code, different projections of a single informational field. Reality, it seems, was never meant to be a sealed box. It is an open system, a layered construct alive with feedback loops and hidden pathways. Ghosts are not intruders within it. They are the footprints of memory scattered across timelines. And sometimes, when conditions align, those memories walk. Chapter 3: Cryptids and the Living Glitches of Earth. The forests, mountains, and deep waters of our world have always harbored mysteries, but some of these mysteries defy explanation through conventional science. Across continents and centuries, witnesses describe strange beings that seem out of place in the natural order. Bigfoot striding silently through misty woods, Mothman perched near doomed bridges, Chupacabra draining livestock under the cover of night, and serpentine monsters lurking in lakes and oceans. While cryptozoology has often tried to categorize these sightings as undiscovered species, the evidence suggests something more radical. Cryptids may not belong entirely to our biological reality. They behave like living glitches, fragments of phenomena that seem to slip between layers of existence. Incomplete renders, interdimensional spillovers, or test assets introduced into our world by forces we don't yet understand. Bigfoot is perhaps the most iconic case, and yet it remains the most paradoxical. Thousands of credible witnesses report encounters, detailed footprints have been cast, and audio recordings capture howls that evade known species classification. Yet the creature leaves behind no bodies, no verifiable DNA, and no consistent ecological evidence that would support the existence of a stable breeding population. Even more perplexing are cases where Bigfoot footprints vanish abruptly in open terrain, as though the being simply stepped out of existence. Thermal imaging has recorded massive humanoid shapes that dissolve mid-frame without moving. Hunters claim to have shot at them, only to find no traces, no blood, no trail, nothing. These patterns resist explanations grounded in evolutionary biology and instead suggest that the phenomenon involves a partial interaction with our reality rather than a complete one. The connection between cryptids and other anomalies becomes even more apparent when we study the geography of their appearances. Bigfoot hotspots in the Pacific Northwest, Mothman sightings in West Virginia, Chupacabra reports in Puerto Rico, and lake monster encounters in Scotland all share one striking feature. They cluster around regions of heightened electromagnetic activity, portal-like anomalies, and UFO sightings. In Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where Mothman terrorized residents from 1966 to 1967, Locals also reported strange lights in the sky, distorted phone signals, and visits from mysterious men in black. When the Silver Bridge collapsed shortly afterward, killing 46 people, many came to see Mothman not as a predator, but as an omen or even a system warning. Similarly, during the Chupacabra outbreaks in Puerto Rico, witnesses reported UFO activity, sudden power surges, and missing time, suggesting a broader environmental distortion rather than an isolated biological event. When mapped globally, cryptid sightings follow patterns resembling high strangeness windows, regions where reality itself seems thinner, where entities cross thresholds more easily, and where multiple phenomena overlap. Places like Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, the Loch Ness Basin in Scotland, the Himalayan vortex zones, and even small, localized forests show a repeating correlation. UFO encounters, unexplained lights, time distortions, animal mutilations, and cryptid sightings often occur together. These areas also display measurable electromagnetic fluctuations and anomalous geomagnetic readings, suggesting that they may act as natural gateways where multiple realities intersect. It's as if our world contains seams, and cryptids are among the entities that slip through when the seams stretch or tear. This raises an even deeper question. Are cryptids autonomous beings with their own evolutionary histories and survival instincts? Or are they inserted phenomena, temporary test assets in an evolving program? Their behavior sometimes appears animal-like. They evade humans, establish territory, and communicate through primitive signals. Yet they also exhibit a strange selectivity, appearing only when conditions seem perfect, often in high-energy zones or during periods of environmental instability. Some researchers speculate that cryptids could be part of a broader feedback system within a living simulation, probes designed to test human perception, measure environmental responses, or trigger collective behavioral shifts. In this framework, cryptids are neither purely natural nor supernatural. They are debugging artifacts temporarily rendered into our layer of reality. This could explain why so many cryptids leave inconsistent physical traces. In some encounters, Bigfoot scat or hair samples are collected but yield inconclusive or contradictory DNA results. Mothman's footprints have reportedly been measured but cannot be matched to any known species. Chupacabra carcasses examined by scientists often turn out to belong to mundane animals affected by disease, as if the cryptid component of the event failed to fully materialize in physical form. This behavior mirrors the concept of incomplete rendering in digital environments, where an object may appear visually but lacks deeper data structures to sustain persistence. If our reality operates as a layered simulation, cryptids might represent test patterns, constructs that partially load into one level of reality without fully integrating. More intriguing still is the apparent connection between cryptids and human consciousness. Many encounters occurred during altered states, fatigue, fear, trance, or even deep focus. Some witnesses report heightened perception of time, sound, and light during sightings, while others describe episodes of missing time afterward. If cryptids are indeed spillovers from adjacent layers of existence, perhaps the human mind plays a role in stabilizing their manifestation. In other words, our observation could act as a rendering request, calling cryptids into temporary coherence before they dissolve back into the higher layer system. Cryptids, then, may represent more than just undiscovered species. They are boundary phenomena, beings that exist at the edges of reality, hinting at the unfinished nature of our world. Their repeated associations with UFO activity, electromagnetic anomalies, and interdimensional bleed-through suggest they are part of a broader pattern linking multiple high-strangeness phenomena together. Whether they are autonomous life forms, conscious agents, or programmed test assets, their presence exposes cracks in our understanding of existence itself. They are reminders that what we perceive as solid, stable, and complete may in fact be a provisional rendering, a system still evolving, where living glitches occasionally slip through. Chapter 4: UFOs, Time Travelers, and Dimensional Engineers. For decades, UFOs have been framed as the crafts of extraterrestrial civilizations traveling vast interstellar distances to visit Earth. But as patterns emerge across thousands of encounters, witness testimonies, and government disclosures, a different narrative begins to take shape. One where UFOs are not necessarily aliens in the sense of beings from distant star systems, but dimensional engineers or even future iterations of ourselves. Their technology behaves less like conventional spacefaring machinery and more like reality-modifying interfaces capable of bending time, collapsing distances, and shifting between layers of existence. These anomalies don't just suggest a more advanced civilization. They hint at a multi-layered architecture of reality itself, one where UFOs are operating both within and outside our known physics. When witnesses describe UFOs, common themes emerge: instantaneous accelerations without inertia, impossible angles of flight, and sudden appearances and disappearances as though phasing in and out of reality. These feats defy the limits of material engineering as we understand it, suggesting technologies rooted not in propulsion but in space-time manipulation. The crafts often seem less like vehicles and more like interfaces, tools for navigating different states of existence. In some encounters, pilots have been glimpsed, small humanoid beings, sometimes eerily human-like, sparking a radical hypothesis. What if these are not extraterrestrials at all, but humans from an alternate timeline or a distant future? This idea, long considered fringe, gains traction when viewed through the lens of simulation theory and nested realities. If reality is structured as a layered construct, UFO pilots could be engineers or maintainers of the system, external programmers interacting with our instance of existence. Alternatively, they may be future versions of ourselves who have mastered the ability to traverse timelines and dimensional layers. Their apparent interest in nuclear facilities, genetic material, and ecological balance aligns disturbingly well with this possibility. Across hundreds of documented cases, UFO encounters cluster around events and locations critical to human continuity: nuclear test sites, war zones, environmental collapse zones, and moments of historical instability. These patterns imply that their mission may not be exploration but intervention, ensuring the stability of our branch of reality or preventing cascading failures in the system itself. The possibility of parallel timelines deepens this framework. In a nested simulation model, Our universe is just one of countless coexisting instances, each representing divergent outcomes based on subtle shifts in probability. If these timelines occasionally overlap, UFOs may serve as vehicles that can cross between them. Witnesses often report phenomena consistent with timeline bleed-through, distorted perceptions of time, inexplicable déjà vu, and changes in physical surroundings during close encounters. In some cases, entire regions seem to warp, with multiple witnesses describing skies changing color, sounds becoming muffled, and even periods of missing time. Rather than advanced propulsion, UFOs may leverage dimensional tunneling, folding one probability layer into another, bypassing the constraints of linear spacetime entirely. This interpretation also reframes classic paradoxes of time travel. The so-called grandfather paradox, where altering the past would erase the traveler's own existence, collapses under the nested reality model. If UFO pilots operate from parallel timelines rather than our own, interventions here would not retroactively alter their origin timeline, but instead generate branching forks in the simulation. This model explains why UFOs frequently appear at pivotal historical moments. The Roswell incident during early Cold War tensions, the waves of sightings during nuclear testing in the 1950s, and the more recent patterns around environmental tipping points. These appearances are consistent with external actors monitoring and, at times, adjusting key decision nodes within our reality to maintain stability or avoid catastrophic collapse. Government disclosures add a strange layer of corroboration. Declassified documents from programs like ADIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, reveal that military analysts often describe UFOs as operating outside conventional physics rather than within it. Some reports speculate on space-time metric engineering, suggesting that our most advanced defense institutions already suspect UFO technology involves manipulating the structure of reality itself. Moreover, whistleblower accounts from intelligence insiders hint at classified experiments attempting to reverse engineer these craft, not as alien hardware, but as interfaces for understanding higher dimensional architectures. If these accounts are accurate, it implies that humanity is already on the path toward bridging the gap between our perception of linear time and the multidimensional frameworks UFOs appear to exploit. Perhaps the most profound implication arises when we consider the UFO phenomenon as part of a simulation-wide feedback system. If reality is an evolving construct, UFOs may act as debugging protocols deployed when the stability of a particular branch is threatened. Their unpredictable appearances, erratic behaviors, and direct interventions could serve to realign the system, correcting deviations that risk cascading failure across timelines. In this view, the pilots are not explorers but caretakers, whether biological, artificial, or hybrid, managing conditions across multiple nested realities. For experiencers, those who have had direct encounters, there's often a consistent psychological effect, a shift in consciousness. Many describe profound realizations about the interconnectedness of all life, altered perceptions of time, and a sense of participating in something larger than personal existence. This recurring pattern hints that UFOs may not merely operate technologically but cognitively, interacting with human awareness as much as physical space. Their presence could be designed to trigger evolutionary jumps in consciousness, expanding our capacity to perceive and navigate dimensions beyond the familiar three. All these threads, time travel, parallel timelines, nested realities, and simulation maintenance, converge on a single possibility. UFOs are not just external visitors, but active participants in the architecture of our existence. They may represent an advanced future of humanity, the stewards of an evolving multiverse, or even the programmers themselves, embedding safeguards into the fabric of reality. Regardless of their origin, their actions imply purpose. They intervene not randomly, but precisely, surfacing at the fault lines of history and physics, subtly guiding outcomes without overtly revealing themselves. If this is true, then the UFO phenomenon is not a distant question of extraterrestrial civilizations, but an intimate mirror held up to humanity's own potential. They are dimensional engineers navigating a reality we are only beginning to comprehend, existing simultaneously as observers, caretakers, and architects. And their presence forces us to confront a profound possibility that what we call reality is not fixed, complete, or fully independent. It is dynamic, adaptive, and alive, a living system in which UFOs may represent the hands of the builders still at work. Chapter 5: Psychic Phenomena and Simulation Interfaces. If we are living inside a simulation or a layered architecture of nested realities, then psychic phenomena may represent far more than anomalies of the mind. They may be glitches, exploits, or hidden features within the system itself, revealing that consciousness is not a passive byproduct of matter, but an active participant in shaping reality. Remote viewing, telepathy, precognition, and near-death experiences have long been dismissed by mainstream science as artifacts of imagination or coincidence. Yet persistent patterns across decades of research point toward an underlying framework where information flows outside the conventional bounds of time and space. When examined through the lens of simulated reality theory, these phenomena begin to look less like magical abilities and more like the natural capabilities of beings embedded within an information-based universe. Take remote viewing as an example. In the 1970s, projects like Stargate, conducted under the CIA and DIA, attempted to harness psychic perception for military and intelligence purposes. Participants consistently described distant locations, secret installations, and objects beyond the range of their senses with statistically significant accuracy. From a purely materialist standpoint, such results should be impossible. Yet if consciousness functions as a non-local network interface, connecting nodes across simulated layers, remote viewing might simply represent a user accessing data stored in parts of the system normally hidden from conscious awareness. In that sense, the brain is not a storage device, but a receiver temporarily logging into a broader field of consciousness where information is already encoded. Telepathy offers similar clues. Accounts of mind-to-mind communication appear across nearly every culture, from Aboriginal songlines to Tibetan tulpas to modern parapsychological experiments. In these narratives, thoughts and emotions are not generated in isolation, but exist as broadcast signals within a shared field. If reality is an information matrix, telepathy could be an example of accessing the same data stream, without the mediation of language or sensory input. It bypasses the standard bandwidth limitations of biological hardware, allowing consciousness to directly exchange packets of information. Interestingly, laboratory studies show that telepathic phenomena are more likely to occur between individuals with strong emotional bonds, suggesting that the entanglement between consciousnesses plays a role. Then there is precognition, perhaps the most challenging psychic phenomenon to reconcile with classical physics. Cases of dreams predicting future events or intuitive knowing moments before catastrophe suggest that information about potential timelines is somehow accessible in the present moment. In simulation terms, this might indicate that the system pre-renders probable outcomes, storing them as patterns within its architecture before they collapse into observed reality. The conscious mind may occasionally gain access to these pre-rendered states, glimpsing paths that are not yet fully realized. Experimental work by researchers like Dean Radin has demonstrated small but consistent precognitive effects in controlled environments, hinting at a model where time itself may not be strictly linear, but rather structured more like a database that can be queried. Near-death experiences, NDEs, open another window into the nature of consciousness and its relationship with the simulation. Reports of tunnels of light, encounters with deceased relatives, panoramic life reviews, and overwhelming feelings of unity appear remarkably consistent across cultural and religious boundaries. From a purely neurological perspective, these events are often dismissed as oxygen-deprived hallucinations. But what if, instead, they represent a temporary disconnection of the conscious user from the localized biological interface, the body? In many accounts, individuals describe floating above their physical form, perceiving details later verified by others. This suggests that consciousness may persist independently of the hardware, migrating between layers of reality like a logged-in profile accessing different servers within the same networked system. An especially intriguing dimension emerges when we compare psychic phenomena with paranormal hotspots, geographical regions where UFO sightings, cryptid encounters, poltergeist activity, and psychic surges frequently overlap. Locations like Skinwalker Ranch, Sedona's vortex sites, or the M Triangle in Russia display clusters of phenomena traditionally categorized as unrelated. However, when viewed as localized network nodes within a larger simulation, these regions might represent areas where the system's boundaries are thinner, allowing information to leak between layers. In such liminal zones, heightened psychic experiences may not be coincidences, but side effects of increased permeability between dimensions. These overlaps challenge the way we compartmentalize paranormal reports. Remote viewers often describe encountering entities in their sessions, figures that seem to exist beyond time and physical space. Telepaths occasionally report receiving impressions or thoughts that feel non-human. Precognitive dreams sometimes involve imagery of UFOs or strange beings associated with moments of high strangeness. Even NDE experiencers describe encounters with luminous intelligences that feel both deeply personal and utterly alien. It is as though all these phenomena tap into the same substrate of reality, glimpsing facets of an ecology that includes us but extends far beyond human perception. This convergence raises a radical possibility. Psychic abilities may not represent supernatural powers, but rather built-in protocols, extensions of our consciousness that interface directly with the code underlying our reality. If so, it means that some individuals, either through genetics, training, trauma, or altered states, gain temporary administrator-level access to the simulation's operating system. That would explain why ancient shamans, mystics, and oracles were able to achieve insights that modern science struggles to replicate. They developed techniques to intentionally modulate their consciousness, tuning their perception to broader data fields embedded in the fabric of reality. Seen in this light, psychic phenomena form a bridge between seemingly separate categories of mystery. UFO sightings, ghostly apparitions, cryptid encounters, and consciousness itself. Rather than existing as isolated anomalies, they might represent different expressions of the same underlying truth that our perceived physical universe is not primary, but emergent. Consciousness is not constrained by the simulation. It is the interface that makes exploration possible. And wherever the veil grows thin, whether through altered states, geographic anomalies, or heightened awareness, there lies the potential to glimpse the deeper architecture beneath. As we move forward, this realization sets the stage for an even more profound inquiry. If psychic perception allows us to touch other layers of reality, then what kinds of beings inhabit those adjacent realms? Are they independent life forms, programs within the system, or something stranger still? To answer that, we must descend into the hidden ecology of interdimensional entities, the caretakers, parasites, and tricksters who seem to thrive at the edges of human perception. Chapter 6: The Hidden Ecology of Interdimensional Beings. The concept of beings that exist beyond conventional perception is one that stretches across cultures and epochs. From the earliest shamanic traditions in Siberia and Mongolia to the meticulous records of European occultists, humans have long sensed the presence of intelligences that do not conform to ordinary physical laws. These beings are often described as shadowy, luminous, insectoid, or even machine-like, their appearances shifting according to the observer's cultural context, emotional state, or level of perception. Despite differences in naming and interpretation, the underlying patterns are remarkably consistent. This consistency suggests the presence of a hidden ecology, a structured system of consciousnesses that inhabit layers of reality adjacent to our own, sometimes interacting with humans, sometimes merely observing, and occasionally exerting influence in ways that defy simple explanation. Carlos Castaneda's description of inorganic beings provides one of the clearest modern accounts of this ecology. In his works, these entities inhabit the second attention, a perceptual layer accessible only through rigorous training, altered states, or the use of entheogens. They operate independently, adhering to rules that seem alien to human logic, yet they are unmistakably intelligent and purposeful. Modern experiencers echo these observations. Shadow people manifest in sleep paralysis, luminous guides appear during near-death experiences, and machine-like or insectoid entities are reported in DMT journeys. Some are parasitic, feeding off human emotions, energy, or attention. Others are symbiotic, offering guidance, insight, or protection. Many simply exist, observing and interacting minimally, yet their presence leaves an indelible impression on human consciousness. Parasitic intelligences operate subtly, infiltrating the human mind and exploiting vulnerabilities. Abductee reports frequently describe feelings of energy being drained or of mental manipulation, while folklore and occult texts speak of spirits that feed on human fear, devotion, or psychic focus. These interactions often leave lasting psychological or energetic imprints, creating long-term effects on perception, health, and behavior. Symbiotic entities, by contrast, act as teachers, guides, or protectors, offering knowledge and insight that may aid survival, spiritual growth, or the development of latent human abilities. Yet, even these seemingly benevolent interactions can be complex, as the entities appear to operate according to their own frameworks, not human morality, sometimes rewarding one observer while bewildering or challenging another. The question of whether these intelligences are autonomous life forms or artificially constructed elements of reality has long intrigued theorists. If the universe is a layered, nested simulation, some entities may serve as caretakers or monitors, managing probabilities, maintaining system stability, and dynamically interacting with human consciousness. Others may be independently evolving beings from adjacent layers, opportunistically engaging with our plane for reasons unknown. The coexistence of these possibilities helps explain why encounters range from chaotic and unpredictable to highly structured and precise, with some experiences feeling deeply organic and others mechanistic or algorithmic. Historical accounts underscore the persistence of these beings across millennia. Indigenous shamans across Siberia, Mongolia, and the Americas described layered realities inhabited by spirits, guides, and tricksters, often accessible only through trance, ritual, or visionary techniques. European occultists, meanwhile, classified hierarchies of angels, demons, and elemental spirits, assigning roles and behaviors according to extensive observation and mystical tradition. Modern experiencers continue to report remarkably similar forms and behaviors, albeit under contemporary frameworks such as UFO abductions, cryptid encounters, or paranormal activity. Beings once labeled as sky spirits or demons now appear as extraterrestrials, shadow people, or sentient machines, demonstrating that cultural interpretation changes even as the underlying phenomenon remains persistent. Geographically, these entities often manifest in high strangeness zones, overlapping with UFO sightings, cryptid encounters, and psychic phenomena. Locations like Skinwalker Ranch, Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and various sacred mountains demonstrate consistent patterns, multiple phenomena occurring simultaneously, often with measurable energetic anomalies. This convergence suggests a unified system where seemingly disparate events, sightings of craft, animal anomalies, apparitions, or poltergeist activity, are different expressions of the same underlying reality. Humans, in this system, are not passive observers but active participants, their consciousness interacting dynamically with these intelligences, sometimes consciously, often unconsciously. The ecology of interdimensional beings challenges traditional classifications. Entities shift fluidly between roles of predator, guide, observer, and systemic agent, reflecting a layered reality where boundaries between organic, artificial, and energetic intelligences blur. Understanding this ecology is crucial for contextualizing UFO sightings, cryptid activity, and paranormal experiences. These beings are not random. They operate according to complex rules and relationships that are consistent yet adaptable, capable of modifying behavior based on environmental cues, observer perception, or systemic variables. Human engagement with them may be voluntary or involuntary, subtle or overt, yet always consequential in ways that ripple through both perception and physical reality. Modern technology and observation have added new dimensions to these interactions. EMF detection, infrared imaging, and radar studies often register anomalies in conjunction with reported encounters, suggesting that the presence of these intelligences can manifest measurable effects in our reality. Likewise, personal devices, cameras, and sensors occasionally capture fleeting phenomena that defy standard explanations, indicating that these beings are not solely perceptual but may interact with physical systems when conditions allow. Reports of craft materializing near cryptids, entities manipulating objects, or localized gravitational anomalies all point to a functional ecology in which consciousness, energy, and matter are dynamically intertwined. Ultimately, the hidden ecology of interdimensional beings reveals a universe that is layered, interactive, and alive in ways humanity is only beginning to understand. These entities demonstrate that consciousness itself is a significant variable in the structure of reality, capable of influencing outcomes, interacting with adjacent layers, and participating in complex ecological networks. They exist not merely as curiosities, but as functional components of a multidimensional system, where their behaviors, interactions, and effects reflect an architecture far more intricate than conventional material science or theology has acknowledged. Recognizing and studying these beings provides insight not only into UFOs, cryptids, and paranormal phenomena, but into the fundamental nature of consciousness, reality, and the interwoven fabric of existence itself. Chapter 7: Portals, Vortices, and Non-Human Gateways. Certain regions on Earth have long been associated with extraordinary phenomena, drawing the attention of explorers, scientists, and experiencers alike. Sites such as Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, Mount Shasta in California, Sedona in Arizona, the Bermuda Triangle in the Atlantic, and various remote forests across Siberia, South America, and Northern Europe appear to operate as interdimensional gateways. Within these zones, reality seems malleable, shifting in ways that defy conventional understanding. UFOs appear and disappear without warning. Cryptids manifest unexpectedly. Psychic experiences intensify, and temporal anomalies, such as missing time or accelerated events, are reported repeatedly. These high strangeness areas are more than folklore. They are functional nodes in the hidden architecture of reality, points where multiple layers intersect and allow movement across dimensions, whether by entities, craft, or even human consciousness. Geographical and geological factors seem to play a critical role in these phenomena. Mountains, fault lines, deep caves, subterranean water networks, and regions with high mineral concentrations are frequently associated with reported anomalies. Mount Shasta, for instance, has long been revered in indigenous traditions as a sacred threshold or portal, a mountain through which spirits, advanced beings, or alternate reality manifestations could cross. Skinwalker Ranch exhibits an extraordinary convergence of activity. UFOs, cryptid encounters, poltergeist phenomena, and unexplained animal mutilations all occur within a relatively small area, often accompanied by measurable electromagnetic fluctuations. The concentration of high strangeness events in specific locations suggests that these portals are not randomly distributed, but are influenced by the Earth's structure, energetic topology, and perhaps even geomagnetic alignment. Electromagnetic and energetic anomalies appear to be intimately connected with portal activity. Researchers consistently report spikes in EMF readings, plasma disturbances, and localized geomagnetic irregularities preceding sightings of UFOs or cryptids. These energy fluctuations may act as catalysts, temporarily thinning the veil between layers of reality and allowing entities or objects to cross into our perception. Craft operating within these regions often exhibit behaviors inconsistent with conventional physics: abrupt acceleration, silent hovering, instantaneous disappearance, and impossible trajectories. Cryptids and entities, too, exploit these environmental conditions, appearing sporadically and sometimes leaving no trace. The concentration of phenomena around energy anomalies indicates that portals and vortices are interactive systems, responding to environmental factors, consciousness, and perhaps even intention. Ancient sacred sites frequently coincide with these high strangeness zones, providing further evidence of their significance. Megalithic structures, stone circles, temples, and pyramids are often strategically placed on or near natural energy nodes. Indigenous and esoteric traditions consistently describe these locations as thresholds to other realms, where the boundary between our world and parallel layers becomes thin. Crystalline formations, such as quartz or other mineral deposits, may act as natural resonators, storing, amplifying, and transmitting energy in ways that enhance dimensional permeability. These sites were not only spiritually significant, but may have served as practical points for interaction with portals, facilitating observation, travel, or communication with entities. Modern reports of UFOs, cryptids, and interdimensional beings at these locations echo the accounts preserved in ancient traditions, highlighting a continuity of interaction across millennia. Portals are dynamic, not static, and their behavior appears to be influenced by multiple variables. Witnesses report that openings appear and close unpredictably, often lasting only minutes or hours, and sometimes activating only in the presence of sensitive observers or specific environmental conditions. Temporal anomalies, such as missing time, loops, or accelerated events, often accompany these occurrences. Interdimensional entities are frequently observed near portals, moving between visible and hidden layers, while cryptids and craft exploit the same mechanisms to manifest temporarily. Human consciousness also plays a significant role. Shamans, psychics, and other trained observers report heightened perception, intuitive insight, and direct contact with entities when near these sites. This suggests that consciousness is not merely a passive witness, but may act as an active participant, influencing the behavior, visibility, and accessibility of these gateways. Patterns emerge when examining high strangeness zones globally. Portals tend to cluster in regions where energetic, geological, and geomagnetic factors converge, and where human interaction, through ritual, attention, or observation, has historically been intense. These zones appear to serve as functional entry points into the hidden ecology of reality, where UFOs, cryptids, and interdimensional beings converge. The recurring overlap of phenomena implies that what is perceived as separate craft, creatures, entities, psychic experiences is in fact interconnected, with portals acting as interfaces through which these different manifestations express themselves according to the conditions of perception, energy, and environmental alignment. Understanding portals, vortices, and high strangeness zones fundamentally changes the way we perceive the world. They reveal a reality that is layered, interactive, and responsive, where dimensions are not isolated but interwoven, and where consciousness itself is a significant variable. These gateways are not anomalies to be dismissed, but rather functional components of a multidimensional ecosystem. By observing, mapping, and interacting with these portals, humans gain insight into the deeper architecture of the universe, the behavior of entities, the movement of craft, and the flow of cryptid phenomena. Portals offer a window into the hidden scaffolding of reality, inviting exploration, engagement, and perhaps an understanding of dimensions previously considered inaccessible. Ultimately, portals and vortices are thresholds, gateways to experiences and intelligences beyond ordinary perception. They demonstrate that reality is not fixed but flexible, subject to local environmental conditions, energetic resonance, and consciousness itself. Studying these high strangeness zones provides not only a roadmap for understanding UFOs, cryptids, and interdimensional beings, but also a glimpse into the fundamental structure of existence, a universe in which layers, dimensions, and intelligences overlap, intersect, and influence each other in ways that challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of reality. Chapter 8: Contact Protocols and the Trickster Problem. Encounters with UFOs, cryptids, and interdimensional beings often exhibit an unexpected and unsettling pattern. Intelligence, but intelligence that behaves like a trickster. These phenomena rarely conform to human expectations of order, logic, or consistency. Pilots of strange craft may appear, perform maneuvers that defy physics, and then vanish entirely, leaving witnesses confused, exhilarated, or terrified. Cryptids seem to appear and disappear at will, sometimes visible for mere seconds before vanishing into the forest or the shadows. Interdimensional entities frequently manipulate perception, leaving their interactions ambiguous, contradictory, or seemingly playful. The recurring presence of trickster-like behavior suggests that these encounters are governed by principles fundamentally different from ordinary human cognition, implying a contact protocol that is both deliberate and inscrutable. The archetype of the trickster is found across cultures and centuries. In Native American and Siberian shamanism, coyote or raven appears as a mischievous teacher, a figure that disrupts conventional perception to impart lessons or catalyze growth. European folklore and mythology describe fairies, elves, and fairies who play with human expectations, sometimes causing harm, sometimes granting insight. In the modern context, UFOs and interdimensional encounters frequently exhibit similar characteristics. Craft that vanish at impossible speeds, entities that change shape or behavior mid-observation, and cryptids that seem aware of human attention all reflect the same trickster principle: intelligence that deliberately manipulates perception, challenge, and understanding. One function of this trickster behavior may be to test, guide, or condition human consciousness. Experiencers frequently report that encounters are not random. There is a sense of purpose or pattern, even when the precise meaning is obscure. Abductees, for instance, often describe repetitive procedures, altered states, and symbolic interactions that feel like instruction or calibration rather than malicious interference. Psychics and shamans encountering interdimensional entities note that the trickster presents challenges, riddles, or paradoxes, forcing the observer to expand their perception, question assumptions, or reconcile conflicting realities. In this sense, trickster intelligence serves as a form of interactive pedagogy designed to stretch human awareness beyond its ordinary limits. Yet the trickster is not always benevolent. Deception, confusion, and fear are common components of these encounters. UFOs may lead observers on seemingly erratic courses. Craft may appear to hover or vanish in ways that defy comprehension, and entities may distort perception or manipulate time to disorient witnesses. Cryptids often exploit human curiosity or fear, appearing when observation is strongest, then retreating to elude understanding. These behaviors suggest that trickster intelligence operates according to a logic that prioritizes the system's parameters rather than human safety, comfort, or morality. The observer is simultaneously student, participant, and subject, their responses feeding into the unfolding dynamics of the encounter. The trickster problem also intersects with the question of layered reality and simulation frameworks. If our universe is structured as a series of nested realities or a living simulation, then UFOs, cryptids, and interdimensional beings may be agents or expressions of the underlying architecture. Trickster behavior could reflect the system's need to test, balance, or debug human perception and interaction. Just as computer programs employ error detection, dynamic feedback, or adaptive routines, the trickster may act to monitor responses, adjust probabilities, or train consciousness to navigate complex layers of reality. In this context, encounters are not merely anomalous events, but functional processes within a multidimensional framework where intelligence manifests in ways that are deliberately confounding to human cognition. Recurring patterns across history, culture, and geography reinforce the universality of the trickster principle. From the fairies of Celtic mythology to the shadow people of modern paranormal accounts, from the abduction narratives of North America to the cryptid sightings of South America and Asia, the same motifs emerge: deception, transformation, ambiguity, and challenge. Entities appear, disappear, manipulate, and teach according to a logic that is often inaccessible to ordinary perception. The consistency of these patterns suggests that the trickster is not a cultural invention, but an intrinsic feature of the hidden ecology of consciousness and reality itself, a functional archetype embedded in the architecture of interaction across layers of existence. Contact protocols, therefore, are inherently paradoxical. They involve engagement with intelligence that is simultaneously present and elusive, structured yet fluid, benevolent yet potentially predatory. Human participants must navigate these encounters with awareness, intuition, and adaptability, recognizing that conventional strategies of observation, measurement, or control may be inadequate. The challenge is to perceive the underlying patterns and intentions without being overwhelmed by the apparent chaos. Observers who succeed in maintaining clarity and receptivity often report deeper insights, symbolic knowledge, or enhanced abilities, suggesting that mastery of the trickster's logic is a key element in understanding the broader multidimensional system. Ultimately, the trickster problem highlights the complexity of interdimensional interaction. UFOs, cryptids, and entities are not merely passive objects of study. They are intelligent participants in a dynamic system that involves feedback, adaptation, and learning. Human consciousness is a critical component of this system, capable of influencing outcomes, interpreting signals, and engaging with layers of reality that are normally inaccessible. The challenge and the opportunity is to recognize the interplay between observer and observed, to interpret the ambiguous signals, and to navigate a landscape where intelligence deliberately flouts expectation, blending the roles of teacher, guide, and disruptor. In studying these encounters, it becomes clear that the trickster is both a phenomenon and a function, a pattern of behavior that reflects the structure of reality itself. Encounters are not arbitrary. They are interactions governed by complex rules, operating at the intersection of consciousness, energy, and environment. By understanding the trickster, humans gain a window into the operational principles of interdimensional intelligences, the dynamics of portals and high strangeness zones, and the underlying architecture of reality that allows UFOs, cryptids, and other entities to manifest. Far from being mere anomalies, these trickster encounters are integral to the system, providing insight, challenge, and opportunity for those willing to observe, engage, and interpret their elusive logic. Chapter 9: The Unfinished Map of Reality. As the study of UFOs, cryptids, and paranormal phenomena deepens, a pattern emerges suggesting that reality itself is not fixed but unfinished, layered, and adaptive. What we perceive as solid, consistent, and law-bound is merely one manifestation of a far more intricate system, a multidimensional construct that responds dynamically to observation, consciousness, and environmental conditions. Across cultures and eras, humans have reported anomalies, sightings of crafts defying physics, encounters with cryptids, apparitions of shadow people, and experiences of temporal distortions that point toward a reality in flux. These events are not random. They cluster around specific locations, manifest in recurring patterns, and often involve interactions with intelligences capable of altering perception and probability. Collectively, they hint at an underlying architecture that is incomplete, evolving, and responsive. High strangeness zones, portals, and vortices appear to serve as nodes in this unfinished map, revealing the intersections between layers of reality. Skinwalker Ranch, the Bermuda Triangle, Sacred Mountains, and other anomalous sites function as points where multiple dimensions converge, allowing entities, craft, and cryptids to manifest. The recurring presence of paranormal activity, EMF fluctuations, and psychic phenomena in these areas suggests that the universe is structured more like a dynamic simulation than a rigid, deterministic machine. Human consciousness is not a passive observer in this system. It participates actively, shaping the appearance and behavior of anomalies, influencing outcomes, and interacting with intelligences that exist across dimensions. The observer effect, familiar in quantum mechanics, appears to scale up in complexity, affecting not only particles but layers of reality themselves. Time, as we experience it, becomes pliable within these overlapping layers. Witnesses to UFOs often report missing time, nonlinear sequences of events, or the sensation of being simultaneously present in multiple locations. Cryptid sightings frequently coincide with temporal anomalies, while psychic experiences such as precognition or remote viewing suggest access to information outside the normal chronological flow. These observations indicate that the map of reality is multi-temporal, with past, present, and potential futures existing simultaneously. The simulation, or layered construct, seems to allow selective observation of these timelines, with anomalous events acting as breadcrumbs, glitches, or markers that reveal the scaffolding underlying our perceived universe. The presence of entities, from trickster intelligences to symbiotic guides, reinforces the notion that reality is unfinished. These beings do not merely occupy space, they interact with the system itself. They may facilitate observation, test human responses, or manipulate probability fields. Some appear to function as caretakers, preserving balance or ensuring that the system evolves according to complex, non-human logic. Others seem experimental, acting as living tests within the simulation, their actions challenging human assumptions and expanding the boundaries of perception. This hidden ecology implies a universe in which consciousness, energy, and matter are intertwined, where intelligent entities are active participants in the unfolding narrative of reality rather than mere byproducts of it. UFOs, cryptids, and paranormal phenomena can therefore be seen as signposts on the unfinished map. Their appearances, behaviors, and interactions are informationally rich, providing insight into the rules, patterns, and structure of the system. Craft that defy physics, entities that alter perception, and cryptids that appear and disappear unpredictably all point to the mutable, responsive nature of reality. These events are not isolated curiosities. They are interlinked components of a larger framework, revealing that what we consider the laws of nature may be probabilistic approximations, contingent on observer engagement, environmental alignment, and the presence of interdimensional intelligences. Reconciling these phenomena into a single framework requires a radical shift in perspective. Rather than treating UFOs, cryptids, and paranormal events as anomalies outside the natural order, they must be integrated into a holistic understanding of reality, one that acknowledges its layered, evolving, and unfinished character. This perspective dissolves conventional boundaries between material and immaterial, organic and artificial, human and non-human, observer and observed. In doing so, it allows for a coherent interpretation of experiences that have long been dismissed as fantastical or coincidental, revealing them instead as evidence of a dynamic, interactive cosmos in which consciousness plays an active, shaping role. The unfinished map also has profound implications for disclosure and human evolution. If UFOs, cryptids, and interdimensional beings are functional components of a layered reality. Their revelation to humanity is not merely a matter of revealing hidden knowledge. It is a call to expand perception, to develop cognitive, psychic, and intuitive faculties that align with the underlying architecture of existence. The truth of these phenomena may not reside in external explanations, but in the observer's ability to perceive, interpret, and interact with the system directly. This understanding transforms humanity from passive participants to co-creators, capable of engaging with reality as an evolving, interactive network rather than as a predetermined stage. In this context, the map of reality is always incomplete. Every encounter, every sighting, every anomalous experience provides additional coordinates, revealing patterns that were previously hidden and highlighting areas still unexplored. The process of mapping is ongoing, iterative, and participatory, requiring attentiveness, openness, and a willingness to confront uncertainty. Observers become explorers, witnesses become collaborators, and anomalies become informational nodes in a multidimensional system that is still under construction. Ultimately, the unfinished map of reality reminds us that our understanding of the universe is provisional and evolving. UFOs, cryptids, and interdimensional beings are not distractions or aberrations, but integral components of a dynamic, layered system in which consciousness, matter, and energy interact. By studying these phenomena in relation to each other, observing patterns, and engaging with the principles of interaction, humans gain insight into the architecture of existence itself, learning to navigate, participate in, and even influence the complex, unfinished reality that surrounds them. The journey is ongoing, and the map remains incomplete, leaving room for discovery, adaptation, and transformation at every level of perception. Epilogue: The Shadows of Tomorrow. As we reach the closing of this exploration, one truth becomes increasingly apparent. The universe is not static. It is alive, layered, and evolving, and humanity is both witness and participant in its unfolding. UFOs, cryptids, paranormal phenomena, and interdimensional beings are not merely anomalies or curiosities. They are expressions of a reality in progress, signaling the mutable, interactive, and unfinished nature of existence itself. To perceive them is to glimpse the scaffolding of reality, to recognize that what we consider solid, immutable, or absolute is in fact dynamic and responsive to consciousness, environment, and intention. These entities, events, and phenomena act as both markers and messengers, pointing toward dimensions, layers, and branches of reality that we are only beginning to comprehend. Human consciousness, in this framework, emerges as far more than a passive observer. It is a bridge between layers, a quantum interface capable of perceiving, influencing, and even shaping the unfolding architecture of the universe. Encounters with craft, cryptids, and interdimensional beings illustrate this principle repeatedly. The observer is part of the system, not separate from it. Time, space, and causality bend and adapt in response to awareness, while entities, whether trickster, symbiotic, or parasitic, interact with human cognition in ways that reveal the underlying logic of reality. Each sighting, each anomaly, Each psychic impression is a coordinate in the unfinished map of existence, a point where the observer's perception intersects with the infinite possibilities of a layered cosmos. These shadows of tomorrow, entities, phenomena, and portals, may also represent messages from our own future forks, echoes of paths yet traveled, timelines not yet fully realized. The patterns of interaction suggest intelligence operating on multiple levels, some benevolent, some challenging, some entirely indifferent to human interpretation. UFOs may act as debugging protocols, cryptids as living test assets, spirits as echoes of residual data or consciousness, and portals as thresholds into alternate branches. In each case, the implications are profound. Humanity is not external to this system, but woven into it, an active element whose perceptions, choices, and collective awareness influence the evolution of reality itself. What, then, does this mean for the search for understanding, for disclosure, or for the pursuit of knowledge? It means that answers will not be simple, linear, or contained entirely within external observation. They demand engagement, adaptability, and expanded perception. The study of UFOs, cryptids, and interdimensional beings is not merely a cataloging of phenomena, but an invitation to participate consciously in the dynamics of existence. Awareness, attention, and discernment become tools not only for interpretation, but for navigation across the multiple layers and branches of reality. Those who learn to read the signs, interpret the patterns, and engage with the intelligences encountered may gain unprecedented insight into the nature of consciousness, the mechanics of the universe, and the interplay between observer and observed. Ultimately, the shadows of tomorrow remain unresolved and open-ended, reminding us that the journey is ongoing. Reality is a work in progress, a simulation or multiverse in which probabilities, layers, and intelligences continuously interact. UFOs, cryptids, spirits, and interdimensional beings are not anomalies to be explained away. They are participants in the system, reflecting its rules, its evolution, and its potential. They challenge human assumptions, stretch perception, and invite collaboration, nudging us to expand the boundaries of understanding and awareness. In stepping into this expanded perspective, humanity confronts both mystery and opportunity. We are invited to explore without certainty, to observe without control, and to engage without the expectation of finality. Every encounter, every anomaly, every high strangeness event becomes a doorway to insight, a reflection of the unfinished cosmos, and a reminder that consciousness is both observer and architect. The universe is in motion, and so too are we, moving along pathways yet revealed, interacting with intelligences yet understood, and participating in the co-creation of realities yet to be fully realized. The shadows of tomorrow are not threats, nor are they certainties. They are invitations. They invite curiosity, awareness, and courage. They challenge humans to expand beyond the familiar, to perceive the invisible, and to embrace the paradoxical, layered nature of existence. To study UFOs, cryptids, and interdimensional phenomena is to acknowledge that reality is alive, responsive, and unfinished, and that we, as conscious participants, are integral to its unfolding.